Bread in various forms has been a staple in many households and cultures all around the world. I myself find comfort in warm things in life, such as a fresh load of towels straight out of the dryer, nice warm laundered socks, and of course, freshly baked bread. Hey everyone, I am FLEC the CHEF, and today we're going to cook some peasant bread. Peasant bread more or less is a simplified version of making a loaf of bread and starts off with just the very basics of what bread is all about. And that's what I appreciate about it. But before we get started, I think I'm going to need my chef hat. There we go. The chef hat is optional, by the way. It just adds to my charm and appeal. So what we need to make this recipe possible is 4 cups of flour, 2 cups of lukewarm water, as well as 2 teaspoons of salt, 2 teaspoons of sugar, 2 teaspoons of yeast, and an optional 2 teaspoons of oil. Now I know what some of you might be thinking. This sounds like too easy of a recipe. It's 4, 2, 2, 2, 2, and 2. And why is the oil optional? Well, I think there's a number of reasons for this. You don't necessarily need oil in your bread, although it does give it more of a moist texture after you're done baking it. But I think this falls in line with the whole idea of peasant bread. Oil back in the day was expensive and not so easy to obtain. You had to press quite a bit of a seed, a leaf, or a fruit in order to get just the tiniest bit of oil. And the purpose of our peasant bread here today is to simplify the whole entire bread making process. And we can have ingredients all day long, but if we don't have the proper tools and utensils, we won't be able to make bread. So we'll also need your favorite spatula. If you're a real adult, we all have a favorite spatula. I hear that's one of the requirements nowadays to becoming an adult. I like to use this whisk just for mixing up my dry ingredients, make sure everything is thoroughly mixed together, so when we add the wet ingredients, the whole process of the yeast and the sugar mixing together to make our dough rise does a much better job. And because this is a no-knead recipe, we will be using some forks in order to mix up our dough and to punch it down later on. I have myself a larger mixing bowl. There's something inside that. It's clean now, you can trust me. Don't worry, you're not eating it. And today we're going to be baking our bread not inside of the traditional loaf pan, but inside of these oven-ready and oven-approved glass baking bowls. Also, because I'm an adult and I do whatever I want, and I've done this a couple times already, I'm also going to take a little bit of the extra dough and make little rolls so I can have some with my dinner later tonight. So let's get started, shall we? The first thing we want to do is mix together all of our dry ingredients. So we have here our 4 cups of flour, put in the big bowl. And in hindsight, I probably should have just put the 4 cups of flour in the big bowl to begin with. Now I got more dishes to do. Work smarter, not harder, kids. And we'll add our salt, we'll add our sugar, and we'll add our yeast. And this, of course, is a matter of personal preference, but I prefer to use the whisk to mix up all of my dry ingredients and make sure they're thoroughly mixed up. Get along the sides. That's where the yeast and the sugar and the salt like to hide. There we have it. Now we want to take our 2 cups of lukewarm water and slowly add it to the mix. Now I'm going to take this whisk out because if I leave the whisk inside and try to mix it up with this bad boy, it's going to get a bunch of dough stuck inside there, and I just don't like cleaning out that whisk that way. That's what your favorite spatula might be for. And I think it's good to add little bits at a time in order to make sure you're getting this thoroughly mixed up. And if your favorite spatula isn't really cutting the mustard for you, so to speak, then you can use your forks in order to move that around too. But I'm a spatula loyalist. A big reason I like that spatula is you can get around the edges very easily. Keep folding it in on itself and take your time. This is the fun part. And of course you want to take your time, not only because it's the fun part, because if you rush this you get flour dust in the air everywhere. And that's not as fun as eating a nice loaf of bread. Oh, by the way, you can do this recipe with gluten-free flour too. You can use sorghum, you can use cassava, but you can use whatever kind of flour you like to do this, and it should work out just fine. Although I have noticed when I did this recipe with gluten-free flour that we did end up getting something that was a little more crumbly as a result, but it was still delicious. I'm gonna go ahead and add my oil now. Rest of the water. I'm putting it in my lap now. Yeah, as you mix it up, it gets harder and harder, as you might imagine, to mix up this dough. I mean, if you've made bread before, you know what this is all about. And if you haven't made bread before, don't give up. Keep moving it around. Think of it as good exercise for your arms. And we're looking for is consistency. We want the dough to be even in texture and moisture and dry distribution ratios. Halfway through, it doesn't hurt to flip the whole entire mass of dough over in order to make sure you have no dryness underneath the pile of dough. which happens quite often. Yeah, we definitely had a pile of some flour underneath. One of the reasons I love this particular spatula so much is that it's curved, right? So you can scoop along the sides, but if you flip it, it's a great way to scrape the inside of your bowl and make sure you get it most everything off of it with minimal effort. Flip the dough again to check underneath. The dough should feel relatively sticky. We want to avoid touching it like I'm doing right now because it's so sticky that you won't be able to get all of it off of your fingers. Now you're going to be a little tempted to add more flour. Don't do it. It's not worth it. You want it to be a little liquidy and kind of doughy and sticky for this whole entire process to work out for us. Upon flipping the dough, I discovered we have no more dryness in there, and now it is time for me to scrape my fingers off with my favorite spatula. Ew. All right, sometimes the best you can is all you can do. So, the next step is to not touch anything else after you lick your fingers. Go wash your hands, you filthy animals. I will too. I'm not a hypocrite. Now the next step is we want to cover the top of this bowl either with a clean dish rag or with some plastic wrap. Now the point of this is to make sure you don't lose much moisture while the dough rises for about another hour or two. And a way I like to do this is by using my microwave, because I don't cook with my microwave very often at all. Very, very rarely in fact. But it's a great place to put your bread to rise because it's an encapsulated place that doesn't allow moisture to leave as easily as it would if it was just sitting there with a towel on top of it. My microwave's up there. I'm not going to show it to you because I'm only showing you one angle of my kitchen for a reason. That's the magic of television, folks. Now we're going to leave that in the microwave or in a warm, dark place of your choosing and allow the dough to rise for the next hour or two. The reason I say next hour or two is because it varies. The warmer your temperature is in your house or in the outdoors or wherever it is rising, the faster it's going to rise because the warmer temperatures excite the yeast, and the yeast will eat the sugar faster and make more of those bubbles that we love inside of our bread so much. So sometimes it might only take an hour, sometimes it might take 2. On a day like today, I'm going to guess it's going to take right around an hour and 15 minutes. But hey, I'm no scientist, I'm an amateur baker. So in the meantime, I'm going to take advantage of this opportunity to clean up my dishes, maybe jumping out of the shower. I got some scruff going on, I could probably shave a bit too. And I'll see you in a little bit when the bread's ready and risen. So I just got out of the shower a little while ago and I checked on the bread rising inside of the microwave, and it still needs a little bit longer to go. So this is the perfect opportunity for a magical scene transition. Here we are. Oh, my hat. Perfect. So I'll take this opportunity to start greasing up the bowls I'll be using to bake the bread in, and tell you a little bit about why I like this recipe so much. And recipes in general. Recipes to me are more or less a guideline. They're not necessarily something that I have to follow to the T. And the thing that makes this recipe so special to me is that you can make little micro adjustments based off of your personal tastes. You can take baking bread and make it into an experiment, right? You can take what you like about the flavor and what you like about the outcome of the bread as far as how crispy it is, or how fluffy it got, how fast or slow it rose. And you can maybe record the information if you're nerdy as I am, or you could just kind of remember things and guess what you think you'd like to do next time you make your bread batch. So another one of the wonderful things about this recipe is its simplicity. It's easy to remember all these ratios. 4 cups of flour, 2 cups lukewarm water, 2 teaspoons of everything else. And it's really hard to mess up this recipe too, because it's right in the middle of what you really want out of your bread recipe, in my opinion, as far as peasant bread goes at least. I actually ended up adding oil to my recipe because there wasn't any oil to begin with, and the other recipes that I was working with as far as making loaves of bread goes called for some sort of lipid or some sort of fat. So I added canola oil to this particular one, and right now I am greasing up my bowls as well as my muffin tin here, or it's actually a muffin silicone thing, with some butter, just regular old butter. And I like the silicone. I love silicone when it comes to baking. Very much non-stick for the most part, and can tolerate high temperatures. And look at that, it's bendy, so you can pop those rolls or muffins or whatever you're cooking right on out of this mold. Part of the joys of cooking though is to adapt and change the recipe to my liking. You can take something out, put something else in, maybe add a little bit more of this, take it down a little bit more of that. And the more you play around with the recipe, the more you'll find something that's palatable for you and your tastes. So the oven's been preheated for a little while now. We have greased up all of our containers. Now it's time to pull that dough out of the microwave and separate it into 3 portions that we can use for both of these bowls, and as well as see how many rolls we can get out of the deal. And would you look at how much that has risen here today? Look at that. So that's just about doubled, if not more than doubled in size. This is where your forks come in handy. We're going to just kind of start punching it down and hitting it with the forks. I like to use the back side of a fork. Start with just one if you need to. And pull it away from the sides of the bowl, nice and easy. Push it down and mix it up. I'm sorry I only have one camera angle. We'll get better equipment as this channel improves. Oh, and by the way, this channel is improving slowly but surely. I just started my own Venmo and PayPal specifically for this channel. If you want to make a donation, you can donate any amount of money you like to TheAmazingFlec at Venmo or to TheAmazingFlec at Gmail at PayPal. I mean, also just a couple days ago, I made my own Google phone number specifically for FLEC. It's 505 B-AMAZIN. You can't make this up. That's actually my phone number now. 505 B-AMAZIN. It's an Albuquerque number. Don't be fooled. I live in Detroit. But Google phone numbers, you can get your own phone number too. You just have to register with the app and you can get your very own phone number. You can pick your own numbers out of the deal. Now you can't just get any phone number, but they'll show you a list of all the ones available. And it took me a while to figure out which one I wanted, but I got it. Anyway, back to work. So now I can kind of just guess and gauge how much dough I want to put in each one of these bowls. What I'm going to attempt to do is maybe fill them up just a little bit below half because I know that these are going to have to rise to some degree. We'll speed this up in post. There we have it. We have 2 bowls with a little bit of dough in each one. Now I'm going to go ahead and take the rest of this dough and kind of throw it into the muffin tin and see how many rolls we can get out of it. Now I don't really know what's appropriate and how to big or small to make these. I'm just going with it. It's an experiment. Have fun. I mean, I have done this before, but every recipe is just a little bit different, at least when I make it, depending on the time of year, the temperature in the air, how fast or slow it wants to rise, and how accurate your measurements were when you first started. And voila! It looks like I'll get about 5 rolls out of it, which is more than enough for my needs. I'm a single dude with a cat. One of the advantages to preheating your oven when you're making bread is that if you have an oven like mine, when you heat it up, the hot air comes out near the top of the range. Which, by the way, I have a gas stovetop, so I have those metal grates over where the gas comes out, and those are also my cooling racks as well. I like to keep the top of my stove nice and clean, so when I put the bread on top, it's not gross. Anyways, I'm going to put this right on top of my stove where the heat from the oven's coming out, and that heat will actually make my bread rise a little bit faster. So now we let our bread rise for another 20 or 30 minutes. Just however big that you want your loaves to rise to is good enough. How about we pause the filming and come back when it's ready? Now we can see here, about after 25 minutes or so, our loaves, or our peasant bread loaves, are now risen inside these bowls, and they'll continue to rise for a little bit more until the outer crust crustens up inside the oven. We have here our rolls, which seem to be a decent enough size, and once again, these are also going to increase in size ever so slightly inside the oven. So now in order to access the oven, I need to move this camera. I can't wait to get a new house. I'll be able to do a lot more filming inside of a new place with more space inside. Give me one moment. Excellent. For the sake of continuity, I'm glad that I put little bits of electrical tape on the floor to mark where my tripod is for my camera. Alright, we have 15 minutes left before we're officially at halftime, in which case I turn down the oven from the 425 degrees to 375, in which case we'll bake it for another 12 to 20 minutes. It all depends on your taste and what you want out of your bread. Do you want it extra crispy on the outside? Then bake it a little bit longer. Do you want it a little bit more gooey on the inside and less crispy on the outside? Then bake it for a little less period of time. It's all up to you. Like Bob Ross once said, it's your world, you create it. Well, that was the alarm, and it looks like we have another 12 to 14 minutes is my guess. But we'll see how brown it gets and how much it gets to where I like my bread. Which is, however it turns out, I'm not picky actually when it comes to my food. I eat anything and everything pretty much for the most part. I'm an opportunivore. I eat when I have an opportunity to. I was blessed with a less than sophisticated palate when it comes to food. And when it comes to a lot of things, I'm easy to please. I'm a cheap date, if you will. So it's all good. Anyways, we'll throw that timer on and come back in just a little while. There's the sound of opportunity. There is the sound of my oven being done cooking my bread. Give me a minute. Excellent. Well, here we go. They turned out about a good size, nice and crispy on the outside too. I can pull those out, set them on the side. Just a little brown on the bottom, but not too overdone. You know what's funny? You want to be careful when you're baking bread. I've been known to juggle fire for a living and also roll balls of fire on my bare arms for the sake of people's entertainment. And you wouldn't believe this, but I burn myself more often when I'm baking. You can't make this up. You just take for granted that you are bulletproof sometimes and you can do amazing things. But when it comes to taking bread out the oven, you can be an idiot and just reach for it without getting a proper means of grabbing it. So I'm using this dish rag right here when I could be using some oven mitts, but All right, peasant bread falls right out the bowl, nice and steamy. Looks good. Peasant bread number 2. Come on, you want to come out of there? If it doesn't come out immediately, you can always resort to using your favorite silicone spatula. Be right back. Here I am. Just kind of tuck down around the sides, separate it from the bowl itself. And the moment of truth. Voila! Or voila, if you pronounce it phonetically. So there we have it. We have our peasant bread as well as our peasant rolls, we'll call them. And I'm pretty excited to try these out. I'm actually on my way out pretty soon to go play Go at a friend's house. And they're making some dinner for me, so I'll be able to bring over one of these loaves and also some rolls to go with the dinner. I should probably get a little more presentable before I go. There we are. So yeah, if your bread wasn't done to crispy delight to your heart's choosing, a pro tip, you can actually take them out of the bowls and as well as out of the muffin tin or silicone baking thingy that you're using. You can turn off your oven and go ahead and put these right on the rack and let them crisp up just a little bit more if you want that crust to be a little more golden brown. But I think I like them just the way they are, nice and lumpy and weird. And peasant bread's great because you can just rip them right apart and dip it into some butter or just eat it just all on its own and it's nice and delicious. You could even slice it up with a good bread knife. It's got a nice serrated edge so it doesn't crumble on you. And you can make some sandwich slices out of those. But by far, one of my favorite ways of enjoying loaf of bread out of the oven is to slice it up and put it in the toaster and crisp it up a little bit more on the inside and put some butter on there, maybe some jam. Delicious. We have some peasant bread by Chef FLEC. My real name's Doug, by the way, and I put the Doug in dough. All right, that was kind of cheesy. And if you're new to my channel, this is my very first cooking show episode. You're welcome. I post a lot on YouTube, and so far this year I've posted every single day of this year. In fact, today is my 101st video I've made on YouTube this year alone. And every Sunday I post another tutorial on something to do with the circus and flow arts. So if you're interested in learning how to juggle, contact juggle, spin things on your finger, or even learn how to play devil sticks, then I'm your guy. Check out my playlist section and see if there's anything there that gels well with you that might pique your interest. But while you're doing that, I'm gonna go ahead and let this bread cool off. Then I'm gonna put it inside of a paper bag, take my Go board and head on over to my friend's house and enjoy a nice evening of some food and some Go game playing. And if you don't know what Go is, it's an ancient strategy game from mainland Asia. I'm a man of many interests and I'm all over the place. Very chaotic poster here on YouTube, and I don't apologize for it. I'm gonna keep on posting every single day, whether you like it or not, and I hope you do like it. So until next time, my friends, remember to keep safe, be well, stay humble, and peace. Oh yeah, and keep on cooking.